There is a place that no longer appears on any map. Its roads have been swallowed by mountains, its walls consumed by forest. Its name, spoken now only in whispers, if spoken at all. That name was Valerion. And before you dismiss it as just another forgotten kingdom, understand something. Valerion was not the largest, not the richest. It did not have the most land, or the most gold, or the most soldiers. What it had was something harder to build than walls, and harder to buy than armies. It had discipline. It had honor. And for nearly 300 years, it had never once been conquered. Neighboring kingdoms tried. Some came with larger forces. Some came with smarter tactics. Some came with both. And every single one of them went home smaller than when they arrived. Because Valerion's generals did not just fight well, they fought with a code. And Valerion's kings did not rule from behind stone walls. They stood in the mud beside their soldiers. For 3 centuries, that was enough. Then jealousy arrived. And it didn't come from outside the walls.
King Aldrin of Valerion had 2 sons. The elder son, Prince Kalor, was the kind of man people followed without being asked. He walked through markets and knew the vendors by name. He sat with soldiers at evening fires and listened more than he spoke. When he eventually became king, most assumed it wouldn't feel like much of a change. The people already treated him like one. The younger son, Prince Valor, was something different altogether. He was sharp, almost unsettlingly so. Where Kalor read people, Valor read patterns. Where Kalor inspired loyalty, Valor inspired a kind of cautious admiration, the sort you feel for something powerful that you're not entirely sure is on your side. And for many years, that was fine. 2 brothers, 2 different kinds of strength. The kingdom had room for both. Until it didn't. Nobody can say exactly when the jealousy started. These things rarely have clean beginnings. But somewhere in the years of watching his brother be celebrated, watching people bow lower, smile wider, lean in closer whenever Kalor entered a room, something in Valor began to curdle.
He started telling himself a story. That birth order was an accident. That the throne should belong to the strongest mind, not the first son. That Valerion, his Valerion, deserved better than a king chosen by chance. The story felt logical. It felt righteous, even. And that is always the most dangerous kind of lie. The one you've convinced yourself is truth.
What followed was not the work of a single night. Valor was too intelligent for recklessness. He moved quietly, carefully. He travelled to neighbouring rulers, men who had always resented Valerion's military reputation, and made them a simple offer. Help me, and I will make sure you are never threatened by this kingdom again. He identified generals whose loyalty had a price, soldiers who had grievances, men who could be convinced that what they were doing was, in some way, just. For months, the pieces moved, and nobody noticed, because nobody was looking for betrayal inside the palace walls. Then came the night of the winter harvest celebration. It was one of Valerion's great traditions, a night of feasting, music, fire, and gratitude. The entire capital was alive with it. The streets were full. The palace was full. Everyone was exactly where Valor needed them to be.
It was never going to be painless. I want you to understand that. I knew what this would cost.
To your trusted commander. The night before.
And the king? Your father?
A long pause. Valor doesn't look away.
Flat. Final. Kingdoms don't survive sentiment. Remember that.
That night, Valerion burned. Not slowly, not with warning. Fire came from the eastern gates, the western barracks, and 3 points inside the palace walls simultaneously. The coordination was devastating. By the time the city understood what was happening, the moment to respond had already passed. Thousands died. The royal palace collapsed into ash. King Aldrin, the man who had ruled with patience and honor for decades, did not survive the night. And Prince Valerion, the second son who decided birth order was unfair, became King Valerion, ruler of a kingdom he had just destroyed in order to possess it.
But not everyone died. Prince Kaelor escaped, with smoke still rising behind him, with fire still eating through the streets he had walked since childhood. He ran. Not out of cowardice, out of something colder and more necessary than courage. Survival. 3 people ran with him. Commander Seren, his most trusted military officer, a man carved from 30 years of service. Captain Thorn, young, loyal, furious, and a child. A boy of only 4 years old, Kaelor's son. They moved north, into the mountains, into the kind of cold that doesn't care who you used to be. Behind them, Valerion finished burning, and the world, in the days and weeks that followed, slowly reached a conclusion. Valerion was gone. The royal line was gone. There was nothing left to find. That conclusion was wrong, but Kaelor made sure it stuck.
They'll send soldiers. They'll search the passes.
Breathing hard, somewhere in the frozen dark of the first night, the child is asleep against Kaelor's chest.
Then we go further than soldiers are willing to follow.
And then what, my king? Kaelor looks down at the sleeping boy. His jaw tightens. When he answers, it isn't a declaration, it's a decision.
Then we wait, and we raise him properly.
They did not stop for 3 days. When they finally did, when exhaustion and altitude forced them to rest, Seren turned and looked back at the dark horizon to the south. No glow, no pursuit, just silence and snow.
Do you think anyone is still looking for us?
No. The new king has what he wanted. He's not thinking about ghosts.
Good. Let him keep thinking that.
20 years passed. The mountains kept their secret. Somewhere in those cliffs and forests, hidden well enough to survive, large enough to grow, a settlement called Stone Ridge quietly became something. Not a village exactly, not a military camp. Something between the two, with a shape that neither name quite fits. The people called Kaelor their chief, but anyone who watched closely would notice something strange. The way children bowed. The way warriors saluted with a particular formality. The way elders asked permission before speaking in full council. Not because they feared him, but because they were performing a ritual they had never stopped believing in. There was no throne in Stone Ridge, but everyone behaved as if there was. Kaelor never explained, and his son, now a young man of 24, had learned over the years that some questions in Stone Ridge simply didn't get answered. Not with hostility, with something more frustrating than that. With quiet, and the suggestion that the answer didn't matter. The boy's name was Arik.
Father, why do they do that?
Do what?
Bow. Like that. Not the way soldiers bow to commanders. The other way. The slower way. Kayla looks at him for a moment. There is something behind his eyes. Not evasion, exactly. More like a man deciding how much weight a child can carry.
Eat your dinner, Arik.
That's not an answer.
No, it isn't. The years in Stone Ridge were not easy ones, but they were not empty ones either. Arik grew into a warrior the way a tree grows in difficult soil, slowly, with tremendous roots. Every morning began with combat. Every evening ended with history. The history of neighboring kingdoms, trade routes, governance, the logic of war, the cost of peace. But there was a gap in the lessons, a deliberate one, and Arik had noticed it for years.
You've taught me the history of 6 different kingdoms, their kings, their battles, their failures.
History is a better teacher than I am.
Then why have you never taught me ours?
The fire crackles. Kayla says nothing for a long moment. We survived. That is enough.
Survived what?
Enough, Arik. Not angry. Final. The kind of silence that closes a door. Arik accepted it. The way you accept a locked room in a house you grew up in. Not without curiosity, but without the right key. Not yet.
This is where our story begins. Not in the palace that burned. Not on the night Valerion died. It begins here, in the mountains, with a young man who does not know his own name. Not his real one. Not the one that would make people bow without being asked. Not the one carved into the history of a kingdom he has never seen. Arik thinks he is the chief's son. He is about to find out what he actually is. But first, he is going to fall in love. And that, as it turns out, is what sets everything in motion.